Good to be back with you all. My name is Alex, and you are on the Classic Cars Roast channel. Is it a legend or just a heavy pile of metal with a good marketing team? Strip away the hype, and what do we have with the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker? This car is a prime example of the Malaise era, where American manufacturers began to lose their touch, and this big iron boat is a magnificent testament to that decline. First impressions? Well, it's got the square, formal design that screams, "I'm a car that needs a driver with a gold chain and a penchant for mediocrity," and that's just the exterior. Now let's talk market situation. You'll find a well-maintained example of this rolling relic floating around the $5,000 to $10,000 range. That's right, folks. This car can be had for the price of a decent used bicycle. But here's the kicker. Most of these cars are being sold after they've sat for years, likely rusting away due to common problems like rear quarters and lower door edges. When you find one with low mileage, it's like finding a unicorn. They often fetch absurd prices at auction. I mean, who wouldn't want to pay outrageous sums for a car that can barely muster a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 14 seconds? And what about the power under the hood? You're looking at a pathetic 140 horsepower from that 318 cubic inch displacement engine. It's a sad reminder of how far we've fallen since 1970 was the last great year for high-compression V8s. You can almost feel the weight of that sluggish acceleration dragging you down as you try to merge onto the freeway. The only thing this car can really pull off is a slow crawl to the nearest diner for a cup of coffee. Don't even get me started on the interior. The long rectangular dashboard with its wood grain trim looks like it was designed by someone who had a vendetta against excitement. Sure, it has power windows and an optional electronic digital instrument panel, but it all feels like a half-hearted attempt to mask the truth. This car is about comfort, not thrills. And trust me, if I'm being honest, I'd rather have a go-kart than sit in this plush yet uninspired haven of mediocrity. So, what do you think so far? Is this Chrysler a classic worth your money, or just another heavy piece of forgettable iron? Ah, the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker. What a time capsule this car is. Picture it, the early 80s, a decade where the Malaise era was in full swing and America was witnessing a steady decline in automotive glory. It's almost tragic, really. The last great year for high-compression V8s was 1970. Since then, we've been on a downward spiral, and the New Yorker is a prime example of this sad reality. When you glance at it, you can't help but feel a wave of nostalgia mixed with a touch of pity. This fourth-generation New Yorker emerged at a time when Chrysler was trying to cling to the remnants of its past glory while grappling with the realities of the oil crisis and the looming threat of foreign competition. The New Yorker was meant to be a luxury sedan, but don't let that fool you. The exterior is undeniably formal, almost square, with a Landau roof option that screams, "I've given up." The vertical slats of the grille, all chrome and shined up like a bad idea, do their best to communicate elegance. But the truth is, it feels more like an attempt to mask mediocrity. Under the hood, the engine is where the real problems begin. The New Yorker boasts a 7.6 to 1 compression ratio and a pathetic 140 horsepower. Seriously, 140 horsepower? That's barely enough to get out of its own way. Pair that with a sluggish 0 to 60 miles per hour time of approximately 14 seconds, and you have a car that feels more like a floating barge than a luxury vehicle. And let's talk about the transmission. The A904, a run-of-the-mill 3-speed automatic, just doesn't cut it when you compare it to the Turbo Hydromatic 400, which is the best automatic transmission ever built. It's like comparing a fine wine to cheap soda. Inside, the New Yorker tries to impress with its long, rectangular dashboard layout featuring wood grain trim and an analog clock, but honestly, it feels outdated even for the time. The cloth bench seats are comfortable enough, but the whole interior gives off an air of minimalism that screams cost-cutting measures. Sure, there are options for leather, but let's face it, who wants to pay extra for something that should be standard in a luxury car? And don't even get me started on the common rust spots and electrical issues. You'd be lucky to find a well-maintained example that doesn't have serious corrosion issues in the rear quarters or lower door edges. It's almost like Chrysler was saying, "We know you're going to keep it for a while, so good luck with that." In essence, the Chrysler New Yorker of 1982 is a symbol of what was once a proud lineage, now reduced to a sad shadow of its former self. With its blend of outdated engineering and half-hearted attempts at luxury, this car embodies the malaise of its era, a time when the American automobile industry was trying to find its footing but ultimately lost its way. It's a beautiful wreck, and I can't help but wonder, who thought this was a good idea? All right, folks, prepare yourselves for a deep dive into the exterior of the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker. I mean, look at this thing. It's like a rolling tribute to the Malaise era, and that's not a compliment. The design is about as square as a block of cheese, and I can't help but think the last great year for car styling was long gone by this point. The factory colors? Well, they range from spinnaker white to quicksilver metallic, but let's be real, they all look like they're trying too hard to mask the mediocrity beneath. I mean, who gets excited about colors like mocha brown? Sounds more like a coffee order than a car color to me. Now let's talk about those body lines. They're about as thrilling as watching paint dry. The square, formal design screams, "I'm a middle manager at an insurance company." It's got this Landau roof option on higher trims, which is basically a desperate attempt to add some faux elegance. But honestly, it feels like window dressing on a poorly built house. No real substance. And those vertical slats on the grille? Sure, they're distinctive for the 1982 model year, but they give off an air of, "I'm trying too hard to be classy," which just makes me cringe. It's like wearing a tuxedo to a barbecue. It's just out of place. The bumpers are chrome with protective rub strips, which would have been impressive if we were still in the era of muscle cars. But here, they feel like an apology for the lack of real character. The weight of this beast is something else entirely. Sluggish acceleration is practically its middle name. And speaking of weight, those comically thick door seals are just a sad attempt to hide the panel gaps. You know what I mean? It's like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig, folks. Now, before I wrap this up, let's not forget those common rust spots. Rear quarters, lower door edges, and the trunk floor. Seriously? This car is practically begging for a rust treatment, and if I'm going to invest my hard-earned cash, I'd want something that doesn't come with a side of corrosion. So, is it a beauty? Not in my book. If you're looking for a classic with charm, this one's got a brutal charm, but it's more like a brutal chore to deal with. Would I put my money into one of these? Not a chance. So here we are, staring into the abyss of the interior of the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker. What a sight to behold. Or maybe not. The dashboard layout is a long, rectangular design that screams, "I'm trying too hard to be classy," with its wood grain trim and that oh-so-adorable analog clock ticking away as if it's mocking you. Seriously, who thought a clock was still a good idea in the age of digital everything? But hey, if you're into nostalgia, maybe it gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling. Now let's talk about the steering wheel. The two-spoke design is about as exciting as watching paint dry, but you can opt for leather wrapping if you want to feel just a tad more sophisticated while you navigate through its sluggish acceleration. And speaking of sluggishness, the seats are comfortable, no doubt about it. The cloth bench is like sitting on a cloud, if that cloud were a bit too heavy and had a penchant for drifting off into the land of mediocrity. You can also go for velour or leather in the Fifth Avenue edition if you fancy yourself a bit of a high roller. But here's where it gets interesting. The console is a minimalist design with a fold-down armrest in the front bench seat. It's like Chrysler looked at luxury and thought, nah, we'll just throw in a bit of convenience and call it a day. And while we're on the subject of convenience, there's an optional electronic digital instrument panel that, quite frankly, is as temperamental as a cat on a rainy day. You might find that it works one moment and then just decides to stop functioning the next. Classic Chrysler. Now, let's address the smell. You know that specific aroma of a car that's been through the ringer but still somehow remains charming? This one has it, but not in a good way. It's more of a musty scent mixed with a hint of burnt rubber that makes you question your life choices every time you open the door. Common rust spots are like little treasures waiting to surprise you, lurking in the rear quarters, lower door edges, and trunk floor. And if you're lucky, you might even encounter the infamous electrical issues that plague this beast. Weak window regulators? Check. Faulty electronic instrument panel? Double check. To wrap it all up, this interior is a mixed bag of comfort and chaos. It's comfortable enough for a Sunday drive, but don't expect it to wow you. For me, I wouldn't spend a dime on this car if I had to deal with its interior quirks. So, would you really want to spend time inside this rolling monument to mediocrity? All right, folks, let's talk about the engine in the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker. Now, when I say engine, I really mean the unfortunate reality that's hidden beneath that formal exterior. This car is equipped with a 31.8 cubic inch displacement engine, known by its code E57. You might be thinking, great, a classic American V8. But hold your horses, because this is where the shock factor kicks in. This engine produces a pathetic 140 horsepower. I mean, come on, you'd get more power from a lawnmower. This is the Malaise era in full swing, folks. Remember when cars used to have real power? 1970 was the last great year for high-compression V8s, and now we're stuck with this sad excuse for an engine. Now let's get into torque, shall we? This engine manages to crank out a respectable 240 pound-feet of torque, which sounds decent until you realize how heavy this beast is. Sluggish acceleration is an understatement. You're looking at a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of approximately 14 seconds. That's not just slow, it's downright embarrassing. I've seen grocery carts with better pickup. This car weighs like a small tank, and it shows. It's like trying to sprint with a boulder on your back. And what about that transmission? The New Yorker comes with a 3-speed automatic known as the A904 Torque Flight. Now, I won't completely trash this transmission because, let's face it, the Turbo Hydromatic 400 is the best automatic transmission ever built. But the A904? It's a far cry from greatness. It's not exactly known for its smooth shifts, and you might find yourself wondering if it's having an identity crisis halfway through your drive. The real kicker is that Chrysler had to compromise on so many levels to keep costs down. A car that should be a luxurious cruiser feels more like a punishment for any performance enthusiast. The sad reality is that this engine and transmission combo embodies everything that went wrong in the Malaise era. A desperate attempt to stay relevant while sacrificing power, performance, and, let's be honest, the very soul of what made classic American cars great. So, would I buy this car? Not a chance. I'd rather take a bus. When it comes to the mechanics of the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker, we have to talk about the transmission and rear axle, two components that often get swept under the rug in discussions about this supposed luxury sedan. Now, the New Yorker is equipped with the Torque Flight 3-speed automatic transmission, also known as the A904. If you're wondering if that's a good thing, let me be blunt. It's decent, but far from the holy grail of transmissions. The best automatic transmission ever built is the Turbo Hydromatic 400, and it's not even close. The A904 might get the job done, but it lacks the brutal charm and mechanical precision of its legendary counterpart. So what about the rear axle? The New Yorker rolls on a rear axle ratio of 2.94 to 1. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds fine. But let me tell you, when you've got a car this heavy and sluggish, that axle ratio does nothing but accentuate its lethargy. The performance numbers are pitiful. We're talking about a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of approximately 14 seconds. That's not just slow, that's an embarrassment. Remember when cars used to have some kick? This thing feels like it's dragging a trailer behind it. Now let's dive into the real issues. Mechanical weak points plague this car, and the transmission is no exception. Early models had transmission issues that could leave you stranded faster than you can say Malaise era. Combine that with the sluggish acceleration due to its weight, and you've got a car that's basically a rolling monument to mediocrity. And don't even get me started on the rear axle. It's like they took a page from the How to Make a Car Handle Poorly handbook. The handling in this car is absolutely dreadful, especially when you compare it to its predecessors from the mid-60s to early 70s. Those rides used to handle like a dream. But this New Yorker? It feels like you're piloting a boat rather than a car. So what do you think? Are you ready to take on the challenge of this outdated machinery? For me, the disqualifying elements are all there. A mediocre transmission, a rear axle that can't keep up, and a driving experience that makes me want to take a nap behind the wheel. If I were you, I'd steer clear of this mechanical mishap unless you're a masochist for punishment. All right, folks, now we're diving into the nitty-gritty of what every real enthusiast actually gives a damn about: the suspension, brakes, and handling feel of this glorified land yacht known as the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker. Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. So what do you think happens when you take a car from the Malaise era, which was already suffering a serious identity crisis, and slap on a suspension system that's about as responsive as a brick? You end up with a driving experience that's more akin to piloting a massive, lumbering battleship than a sleek automobile. First off, let's talk about that suspension, if you can even call it that. The New Yorker's setup is a classic case of good enough engineering. It utilizes a basic front independent suspension and a rear leaf spring arrangement that's more suited to a pickup truck than a luxury sedan. The ride quality? Well, it's soft, and in this case, that's not a compliment. You float over bumps, but when it comes to corners, forget it. This thing rolls like a drunken sailor, and any sense of precision is out the window. Cars from the mid-60s to early 70s had a handling finesse that this New Yorker could only dream of. You know, back when steering felt like a direct connection to the road instead of a vague suggestion. Now, let's pivot to the brakes. You might think that a car of this size would come equipped with some serious stopping power, but no. The brakes are just as underwhelming as the rest of the package. They're decent enough for cruising down the boulevard, but slam on the pedal, and you'll wonder if you've accidentally engaged the sluggish mode. In a world where the best automatic transmission ever built, the Turbo Hydromatic 400, exists, why would anyone settle for anything less? The New Yorker's brakes, frankly, feel like they belong in a budget economy car from the late 70s, not a so-called luxury vehicle. And handling? Well, let's just say if you're looking for a car that's going to give you a thrill behind the wheel, this isn't it. The New Yorker's handling is so lackluster that even the worst sports sedans from the era look like track stars in comparison. Remember, this is a car that takes approximately 14 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour. By that time, you could have made a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, and caught up on your favorite TV show. So, here's the bottom line. If you're a die-hard classic car enthusiast with a thing for big iron, this Chrysler New Yorker may hold some appeal for its retro charm. But if you value spirited driving and performance, you'd be better off looking elsewhere. The suspension, brakes, and handling are simply not in the same league as even the most mediocre cars from the golden age of American muscle. You'd be left wondering why you settled for this over-engineered mess. When it comes to reliability, the 1982 Chrysler New Yorker is a mixed bag and not in a good way. Sure, it might look like a plush cruiser from the outside, but peel back the layers, and you'll find a veritable minefield of issues waiting to ambush you. Common rust spots are the bane of this model, with the rear quarters, lower door edges, and trunk floor being particularly prone to decay. It's like the engineers just threw their hands up and said, "Who cares about longevity?" Electrical gremlins plague these cars too, with faulty electronic instrument panels and weak window regulators that refuse to cooperate. Sluggish acceleration is another pitiful aspect of this vehicle, taking an agonizing 14 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour. Talk about a performance embarrassment. Now, considering its niche appeal, you might think you could pick one of these up for a song, but that's where the shock factor kicks in. You can find well-maintained examples fetching anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, which is frankly absurd for a car that was once considered just a comfortable mid-luxury sedan. A few years ago, you could have bought one for a few $100, but now? These things are being treated like they're some kind of rare collectible. It's almost laughable how the market has shifted for these once-ignored vehicles thanks to their brutal charm and unapologetic character. So, what's the final verdict on the Chrysler New Yorker? If you're a die-hard fan of the Malaise era and appreciate the nostalgic value of traditional American luxury, it might just tickle your fancy. But for me, the compromises are far too glaring. The mediocre performance, the reliability issues, and the rust problems are enough for me to steer clear. I wouldn't spend my hard-earned money on this thing unless it was in pristine condition for a steal of a price. Remember, it's only original once, and if you find one with low mileage and in good shape, by all means, go ahead and buy it. Just be prepared for the inevitable repairs that will come knocking at your door. Would I want to take this car for a spin? Not a chance. Would you spend your money on this? If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Leave your comments and impressions. Your opinion is very important to me. Until next time.